Hi, everyone. Welcome back to English Unlimited podcast. I'm Charlie.
And I'm Jamie.
So let's talk about that moment, that universal moment of panic in a conversation.
Hmm.
You're in the middle of a great chat in English. You're feeling good. You're confident. And then, boom, nothing.
The wall.
Total wall. The topic just dies. Your mind is completely empty. And you get that awful, awkward silence.
Yeah. And you just want the ground to, swallow you whole. It's a horrible feeling.
It's paralyzing.
Mhm.
And I think for our listeners, that feeling is even worse, right?
Yeah.
Because you're operating in a second language.
Oh, for sure. The panic isn't just, social awkwardness. It suddenly feels like proof. It feels like it confirms that deep, secret fear that your English just isn't good enough.
Exactly. It's so vulnerable.
It is.
And that cycle of panic and fear is what we are taking apart today. We are doing a deep dive to give you a complete toolkit.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't about memorizing vocabulary lists. It's about mastering every single stage of a real conversation.
From the very beginning to the very end.
All of it, from that scary first hello to keeping the chat going and making it meaningful, and even, how to leave without feeling rude or awkward.
And the mission here is really to shift your whole mindset. We want you to stop trying to perform English perfectly
Yes,
and start instead focusing on just connecting with the person you're talking to.
that's the goal. By the end of this deep dive, you're going to have real, concrete techniques to help you feel present, confident, and actually heard in any English conversation.
We've got some fascinating stuff from our sources today, some psychology, some hard data, and a lot of actionable frameworks.
You do.
Yeah.
But before we get into why our brains freeze up like that, please make sure you hit that subscribe button for the English Unlimited podcast and give this deep dive a like.
It really helps us out a lot, and it means we can reach more learners like you.
Okay, so let's dig in. Why do we get stuck? Why does our brain just quit on us when we need it the most?
Well, our sources point to this really big core conflict. It's the difference between having a performance goal versus having a connection goal.
Okay, performance versus connection.
Mm-hmm.
What do those actually look like in a real conversation?
Right. So this is basically the foundation of everything. When you talk to someone, you're usually, maybe subconsciously, following one of these two paths.
Mm-hmm.
The first is the performance goal. And if that's your goal, all your energy is pointed outwards. You're looking for validation from the other person.
You're trying to impress them.
You're either trying to impress them, or maybe even more common, you're just trying desperately to avoid looking stupid or making a mistake.
Okay, I can feel that. So if I'm speaking English and the voice in my head is saying, okay, you have to use a fancy word now, don't forget the third conditional, that's me performing.
That is pure performance goal.
Yeah.
100%. It's all about how you look, not about what you're actually communicating.
Right.
And the sources, especially from behavioral science, they say this performance thing is usually rooted in something deeper, like a feeling of shame or insecurity. You feel like your English isn't good enough, so you try to inflate yourself. You try to build this shiny, perfect version of you to show to the world.
This idea of self-inflation, it sounds exhausting.
It is. And that's the problem. Trying so hard to impress people is not only draining, it actually, and this is the irony, it often makes you seem less trustworthy.
Wait, how? You'd think trying to sound smart is a good thing, especially at work.
You would think so, but if your main goal is to manage your image, to control how you're being perceived,
You're not actually listening.
you're not present. You're just filtering everything through this lens of how does this make me look or how can I sound smart next?
That makes perfect sense. I've definitely talked to people like that. You can feel that they aren't listening to you. They're just waiting for their turn to perform again.
Exactly. And you can't build a real connection with someone who's wearing a mask,
Yeah.
The whole conversation becomes about them taking energy from you to feel good about themselves.
It's transactional, not relational. I like that. So the alternative, the healthier goal that we should be aiming for is the mastery or connection goal.
Absolutely. The connection goal is all about genuine interest. It's about respect, and it's about focusing on the process.
Okay.
So if you have a mastery mindset, you're measuring your success by your own internal standards. Am I learning? Am I communicating my idea effectively?
Not, does this native speaker think my grammar is perfect?
Exactly. When you focus on connection, a grammar mistake is just a little speed bump. It's not a disaster that ends the conversation.
And that fear of disaster, that's what leads us to foreign language anxiety, the FLA.
Right. And FLA is this, our sources call it a self-exacerbating syndrome.
Okay, what does that mean? Self-exacerbating.
It means the problem makes itself worse. Think about it. You worry so much about making a mistake.
That you just don't talk. You stay silent because it's safer.
Precisely. But when you avoid practicing, your skills don't get any better.
Which just proves your original fear that you're not good enough.
And then you're even more anxious next time. It's a vicious circle that just gets tighter and tighter.
Wow, okay. So you have to actively break that cycle.
You have to. And we actually have some really interesting data about what triggers this anxiety for English learners specifically.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, one study found a huge difference in anxiety depending on who the student was talking to.
Let me guess. It's more stressful talking to a native speaker.
Way more stressful. L2 students were significantly more anxious when they were talking with an unfamiliar native English speaker compared to an unfamiliar non-native English speaker.
I 100% relate to that. It feels like a test the second you open your mouth. Do you have the actual, anxiety scores from the study?
I do. So with an unfamiliar native speaker, the average anxiety score was 2.375.
Okay.
But with an unfamiliar non-native speaker, that score dropped all the way down to 2,000.
That's a big drop. And it's only based on who they think the other person is.
Exactly. It's the pressure. It's this perceived standard of perfection.
And you're saying this isn't just with strangers.
That's the craziest part. The study also found students felt more anxious talking to a friend who was a native speaker than a friend who was a non-native speaker.
Wow.
So the pressure is always there. And our job, and what we want to help you do, is to see that pressure, name it, and then start to dismantle it.
Right. The second you start trying to prove your English is perfect instead of just trying to communicate.
You're feeding the anxiety.
Stop trying to impress. Start trying to connect. That's the big takeaway.
That is the core of it all.
So once we get that, our goal is connection. What's next? We need some practical tools, right? Especially for the beginning of a conversation, which is always the most stressful part.
For sure. That's the highest anxiety zone. So our techniques here have to be really solid and reliable.
We need to warm up, relax a little, and get away from that performance anxiety. What makes a good starter?
Well, the sources are really clear on this. Whether it's just a one-on-one chat or you're in a group, the starter has to be low in social risk.
Low social risk. So you're not asking someone for their deepest, darkest secrets right away.
Definitely not. No. What's your biggest regret in life as an icebreaker?
Oh, that's the worst. I've been in those workshops. Everyone just tenses up immediately.
Right. It just creates stress. A good opening is just about helping everyone to mentally arrive, to be present and to set a relaxed, safe feeling.
It gives you a chance to breathe.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's get into technique number one, which I think is a total game changer for a lot of learners. And that is shifting from questions to statements.
This is such a huge pivot. When we get nervous, our default setting is just to ask a lot of questions.
Right. Where are you from? What do you do? Do you like the city? On and on.
Yeah, and it starts to feel less like a conversation and more like an interrogation.
Or a job interview.
Yeah.
You're putting all the pressure on the other person to perform.
You are. And from a psychological standpoint, when you're just asking questions, you're not giving anything of yourself. You're not being vulnerable at all.
So what's the solution?
The solution is to use what's called the law of reciprocity.
Okay.
So instead of asking a question, you start by making a statement about yourself to introduce the topic.
So you share something first.
Right. It encourages the other person to share back without feeling like they're being put on the spot.
Can we walk through an example of how a listener could use that, today?
Totally. Let's say you want to talk about travel. The typical high-pressure question is, have you traveled recently?
And the answer could just be no, and then silence.
Exactly. Conversation over. Instead, you could open with a statement, something like, I went to India last year. I love visiting countries with great food.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah.
Because it gives the other person so many ways to respond.
Right. They can ask you about India. They can talk about food. They can share a place they've been to. You've given them options.
It feels so much more generous.
It is. Or hobbies. Instead of, what do you do for fun? You could say, I've been trying to learn to bake sourdough bread lately, and it is so much harder than it looks.
Right. And that invites them to share a struggle or a hobby they have. The conversation just flows better.
It's a completely different energy.
Okay. Technique 2 is all about what's right in front of you, using shared context and observational comments.
This is probably the most reliable icebreaker in the world because you're just talking about the reality that you're both in.
The shared environment.
You both know the weather is bad, or the line for coffee is really long, or the room is freezing.
You're just acknowledging what's true.
Yes. So a simple comment like, wow, this elevator is taking forever, is so much more natural than trying to think of some complex, brilliant question to ask.
I think that's super helpful for B1 learners, too. It
Yeah.
lets you use really simple grammar. You're just observing what you see.
You're reacting to reality, not trying to perform a script from a textbook.
Right.
And you can broaden this out a little bit too. You can connect it to like wider cultural things, popular TV shows, big sports games, stuff like that.
So if you're talking about something and you say, oh, that sounds like something that would happen on that new Netflix show, you're finding common ground.
Exactly. It's low stakes and it connects you to a shared world.
So beyond those one-on-one chips, what about some activities that our listeners could use in, say, a study group or a language class?
Yeah, we've got a few great low-risk examples. First one is team trivia.
Okay.
You have everyone in the group secretly write down one interesting fact about themselves, like my secret talent is, or my least favorite food is.
Mm-hmm.
Then you read the facts out loud, and the group has to guess who wrote which one.
Oh, that's fun. It forces you to ask questions and justify your answers. I think Maria wrote that because she loves to travel.
Exactly. And you learn about people in a really safe, playful way.
I like that. What else?
Then there's the classic, find someone who...
Oh, yes. The grid.
The grid, you have a list of prompts like, find someone who has been to South America, or find someone who can play a musical instrument.
And you have to walk around asking people questions to fill out your sheet.
Right. It gets you moving, it gets you talking to lots of different people, and it's very structured, so the anxiety is low.
That's a great one for practicing question formation.
For sure. And one more, which is great for visual learners, is using picture prompts.
So you just show a picture.
Yeah, an interesting or unusual one, a weird scene, a
Yeah.
strange object, and you just ask people, what do you see? Or what do you think is happening here?
That's smart. The picture provides all the vocabulary you need, really. It lowers the barrier to speaking.
It does, and you can provide sentence starters to help I see A or I think that because
Yeah.
the main point for all these is to lower the pressure. It's about participating, not being perfect.
Okay, so we've broken the ice. We're in the conversation. Now we get to the middle part. How to keep it going and make it meaningful. And this all comes down to one thing, active listening.
It's everything. It's the whole game. And we need to be clear what active listening is not. It is not passive. It's not just waiting for your turn to talk. It's a conscious choice to give someone your full attention. And this is the most important part. The other person has to feel it.
They have to feel heard.
If they feel heard and respected, you are winning at conversation no matter how many grammar mistakes you make.
But this is where that trap for non-native speakers comes in.
Right?
We look like we're listening,
Right.
but in our heads, we're just frantically planning our next sentence.
That's it exactly. Our sources point out that for L2 learners, maybe a quarter of your brain is hearing what they're saying. The other 3/4 are just planning your response. And it's driven by that same anxiety we talked about. You're so worried about what you need to say next that you completely miss what they're saying now.
I can picture that so clearly. I'm nodding, I'm making eye contact, but inside my brain is just spinning, trying to remember the right verb tense.
You're still in performance mode. You're curating your image instead of being present.
So how do we break that pattern?
2 things. Trust and simplification. First, you have to trust that you will be able to respond in the moment. You don't need to plan a perfect, complex sentence.
Just focus on what they're saying.
Just focus on them, their words, their body language, their feeling. And second, simplify.
Oh, that's a relief. We always think we need to sound so academic.
No. Simple, clear, direct grammar is often much better, especially in professional English. You don't prove your value with complex sentences. You prove it with your ideas and your expertise.
Focus on the message, not the accent.
100%.
Okay, let's give our listeners the full active listening toolkit. We've got 6 key techniques here.
Let's do it. We should break them down one by one.
Okay, number 1, pay attention. This is more than just putting your phone away, right?
Oh, yeah. It's about minimizing all distractions, internal and external. It means making eye contact, but, being aware of cultural differences there.
Good point.
But the most important part is practicing wait time. Don't interrupt them. Don't finish their sentences for them. Give them the space and time to get their thoughts out.
Okay. Number 2, withhold judgment. That sounds really hard.
It is, because our brains are built to judge and categorize things instantly. But your job as an active listener isn't to decide if they're right or wrong.
What is it then?
Your job is just to make them feel heard, to create a safe space for them to share, even if you don't agree with them. You're validating their right to have that thought or feeling.
Okay, I see. Number 3, Reflect.
Yeah.
How is that different from, say, summarizing what they said?
Reflecting is more about showing you're engaged in the moment. It's often nonverbal.
Like nodding.
Nodding, yeah.
Right.
Or keeping an open body posture. And using those little verbal cues like, uh-huh, or I see, or wow,
Yeah.
you're just reflecting back to them that you're receiving their signal. You're with them.
You're tracking the conversation.
Okay.
Number 4, clarify. This feels super important for language learners.
It's essential. This is where you make sure you really understand. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help. Use phrases like, so when you say X, do you mean Y? Or could you explain that term a little more? It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of a good listener. It prevents so many misunderstandings later.
Right. Number 5, summarize. This is the big confirmation step.
This is where you prove you were listening. You restate their main points back to them, but in your own words.
So you might say something like, okay, so let me see if I've got this right. The main problem is X, and you think the solution might be Y.
Exactly. It shows you absorbed the big picture, and it gives them a chance to correct you if you misunderstood something.
Perfect. And finally, number 6, share.
This is about timing. You only start offering your own ideas or solutions after they feel completely heard and understood.
You don't just jump in with advice.
Never. In fact, it's best to ask them for their ideas first. It empowers them and shows you respect their ability to solve their own problems. You're a guide, not a director.
These 6 steps are so clear. But the biggest takeaway from our sources links listening to something else entirely. It links it to action.
This finding is huge, especially for anyone who works in a team. It turns out that taking action on what you hear is often 2 times more important for making someone feel listened to than having good listening skills alone.
Wait, 2 times. So what I do is more important than how well I nod my head.
Exactly. Think about it. If you're kind of a poor listener, you don't make great eye contact, whatever, but you immediately act on the feedback you're given, people will feel more heard than if you're the world's most empathetic listener who then does nothing.
Wow. That's a huge lesson for managers.
It's a huge lesson for everyone. Action is what builds trust. It creates psychological safety. If people know their ideas will be taken seriously, they'll keep sharing them. If not, they'll just stay silent.
Follow-through is the ultimate form of listening. I love that.
It really is.
Okay, so we're listening, we're connecting, but how do we take the conversation deeper? We want to just stay on the surface.
Right. And for that, we need to master open-ended questions, or OEQs.
These are the questions that can't be answered with a simple yes or no.
Exactly. They are the engine of a deep conversation. They get people to share context, motivations, feelings. They invite a story, not just a fact.
So instead of asking, did you like your last project, which is a yes-no question,
Right.
you would ask, what was the most challenging part of your last project and what did you learn from it?
Perfect example. That second question forces them to think, to reflect, and to give you so much more information to work with.
But what happens when you ask a really good open-ended question and you still get a short answer? Like you ask about their trip and they just say, it was fine.
Yeah, that can be frustrating. That's when you need a follow-up strategy. You can't just let "it was fine" be the end of it.
So you have to probe a little bit.
Gently, yeah. You can say something like, I'm glad to hear that. What specifically made it a good trip? Or can you tell me a bit more about that?
You're just signaling that you're still interested and you want more detail?
You are. You're giving them a little nudge to open up more.
Okay, so that's about the content of the conversation. What about the structure? We need something to help the conversation flow smoothly, especially for L2 speakers.
We do. And we call this linguistic glue.
Linguistic glue. I like it.
This is so important because many non-native speakers have what's called pragmatic difficulty.
And what does that mean exactly? Pragmatic difficulty.
It's about the social rules of a conversation, knowing when it's your turn to speak, how to connect your idea to the last thing that was said, how to signal that you're about to disagree, that kind of thing.
So the glue helps us stick our ideas together in a way that makes sense.
Perfectly put. We're talking about functional or transitional expressions. They are the words and phrases that manage the flow and logic of the conversation.
Can you give us a few examples of this glue that we can start using?
Absolutely. Let's group them by their function. So if you want to add another point, you can use words like furthermore, in addition, or a bit more casually, what's more.
Okay, adding words. Got it.
If you want to contrast an idea, you'd use things like however, on the other hand, or although.
Right, showing a different side.
And if you're ready to summarize or state a result, you'd use therefore in conclusion or as a result.
That's so useful. Just by starting my sentence with, however, I'm telling the listener that a different idea is coming. It organizes the whole conversation.
It gives a roadmap to your thoughts.
Yeah.
And speaking of organizing our thoughts, we also found some really cool psychological techniques to help boost speaking engagement.
Ooh, okay. Let's hear them.
The first one is reframing. This is all about changing your internal monologue.
Your self-talk.
Exactly. It's a technique from NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. It teaches you to reinterpret challenges as opportunities.
So instead of thinking, oh no, I made a mistake, I'm a failure, you reframe it as, okay, I made a mistake, great, that's useful information, now I know exactly what I need to practice.
That's it. That one simple mental shift has been shown to massively increase confidence and reduce anxiety. Failure becomes data, not a judgment.
I love that. Failure is just data. What's the next technique?
The next one is called contracting speaking. This one is a bit more formal.
It sounds serious, like signing a contract.
That's basically what it is. A study had students sign an actual contract or written commitment to speak a certain number of times in their language class each day.
Wow, and that worked.
It significantly lowered their anxiety because it took away the choice. Participation wasn't optional anymore.
So you're forcing yourself to break that avoidance cycle we talked about.
You are. And the study found it actually built up positive feelings like courage and hope. You're being loyal to the commitment you made to yourself, which is super empowering.
That's really cool. Okay, what's the last one?
The last one is a classroom tool called scripted role play.
Okay.
This is so effective because students are working with a pre-written dialogue. The words are already there. They're already correct.
Ah, so it takes away the fear of making a mistake on the spot.
Totally. It frees up your brain to focus on other things like your pronunciation, your rhythm, your fluency, your body language.
It's like a bridge between the textbook and the real world. You get to practice a real-life situation, like being at a hotel or in a restaurant, but in a totally safe, controlled way.
Exactly. It builds confidence and makes the transition to spontaneous, real-world conversation so much smoother.
We have started. We have deepened. We have connected. But now we have to get to the part that is so awkward for so many people.
The exit.
The exit. How to end a conversation without just like slowly backing away.
It's such a key skill.
Yeah.
And knowing how to do it well is really about asserting your personal boundaries.
And that's what makes it so hard, right? Especially if you're a people pleaser. You don't want to make the other person feel bad.
Absolutely. When you end a conversation, you're basically drawing a line and saying, this is the limit of my time and energy right now. And for a lot of us, that feels really uncomfortable to do without a good excuse.
So we need strategies that are clear, but also kind. What's the golden rule here?
The golden rule is to combine your verbal and nonverbal signals. Your body language has to support your words.
So before you even say anything, you can start signaling that the conversation is ending.
Right. You might, start to slowly stand up or shift your posture. You could extend a hand for a handshake, maybe take a tiny step back while you're smiling.
These little cues prepare the other person for what you're about to say.
That's the key. So let's talk about the actual words. First, for a casual setting with friends or colleagues.
Okay, so the goal here is to be direct, but warm and appreciative.
Exactly. You could say something like, it's been so great catching up with you. I've got to take off now, but let's talk again soon.
I like that. It values the conversation, but still sets the boundary.
Or, thanks for sharing that with me. I've actually got to run, but we'll definitely pick this up later.
It's positive and it leaves the door open.
Right. Now, what about a more professional setting, like a networking event or a conference?
Okay, here the tone needs to be a bit more formal, and you have to be really respectful of time.
Yeah, you often want to link your exit to an external factor. It makes it feel less personal.
So what does that sound like?
You could say, I hate to cut this short, but I need to go and say hello to the host. It was a pleasure talking with you.
Or, I know we both have a lot of people to meet tonight, so I'll let you go. It was great connecting.
Perfect. Or if you're in a meeting, I see we're almost out of time, so I'll have to stop us there. This has been really productive.
It's all about being polite, but firm.
Soft assertion. Now, the trickiest one. What if you need to end a heated conversation? One that's getting stressful or uncomfortable.
Oh, this is a tough one. The emotions are high.
The absolute key here is to always use I statements. Never, ever start a sentence with you.
Because that just makes people defensive. You always do this, or you're making me angry.
It's like throwing fuel on the fire. You have to own your own feelings. So instead of, you're stressing me out, you say.
I feel overwhelmed when our conversation gets this heated.
Yes. And then you state your need. I feel overwhelmed when our conversation gets this heated. I need to take a break. Can we please talk about this later when we're both calmer? That's so powerful. You're not blaming them, you're just taking care of your own emotional state.
And that is a boundary no one can argue with. It's calm, it's assertive, and it protects your peace. Ending a conversation well is just as important as starting one well.
We have covered so much ground today. Wow.
We really have. From the psychology of anxiety all the way to the practical words, you need to end a conversation gracefully.
I think the biggest, most important shift we've talked about is moving away from that suffocating performance goal and committing fully to the connection goal, using English not to impress, but to actually understand and connect with another person.
And you all now have a full toolkit for every stage. You know how to start with statements, how to deepen with active listening and OEQs, and how to end with clear, respectful boundaries.
But we don't want you to feel overwhelmed with all this information, so we have a very simple micro-challenge for you to do this week.
We want you to take all this theory and put it into practice, but in a very small way, in your very next English conversation. Could be at work tomorrow, could be on a call tonight. We want you to choose just one piece of that linguistic glue we talked about.
Just one transitional word. Maybe it's an addition or however or as a result.
Pick one and then use it intentionally. Focus just on using that one word correctly. It's a tiny action that starts building that habit of making your English sound smoother and more organized.
It's a small step, but it makes a big difference.
And before we go, we want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on.
This goes right back to that idea of mastery over performance. Think about this for a second. How would your motivation to learn, your willingness to take risks in English, how would it change if your teachers or your boss adopted a true mastery orientation?
What do you mean by that?
What if, when you made a mistake on a test or a report, you were allowed to earn your points back simply by explaining why the correct answer was right?
Wow. So failure would become part of the learning process, not the end of it.
Exactly. That shift away from the idea of permanent failure and towards continuous learning, that's the mindset we want you to carry with you on your entire English journey.
That is a powerful thought to end on. If you love this deep dive and you want more tools to boost your English confidence, please don't forget to subscribe to English Unlimited Podcast.
We loved having you with us for this discussion today.
I'm Charlie. See you next time.
And I'm Jamie. Bye.